Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Basketball Conference, the ACC Football Podcast. My name is Joey Weaver. He is Mike McDaniel. Mike, who's the next team you want to talk about in our preview series?
Wake Forest. We got Robert Reinhard on, of course, from SB Nation's Blogger So Dear. He's been on this podcast multiple times now at this point, helping us preview Wake Forest. Robert, what's going on, man?
Not too much. Just, the season's about a month away from today, I think. So it's always a good feeling when football's back in the air and training camp's about to begin.
The Demon Deacons are one of our favorite programs here on the podcast. No sarcasm or anything in there. Like, love them. They are fun to watch. It is really fun watching what Dave Clawson's been able to build there the last few years. So we want to talk about last year. We were looking at their schedule coming into the year. We were not really sure how they were going to fare against a tough-looking schedule, and they actually pulled out a strong 8-5 finish. Kind of another testament to what Dave Clawson's been able to build there at Wake Forest. And so coming into 2018, Robert, this is what we want to talk about is kind of how the program's looking coming in. The biggest storyline, I think, for pretty clearly coming into Wake Forest's 2018 season is going to be the quarterback situation. John Wolford leaving after last year. He graduated. He was a 2 or 3 year starter. I can't remember, but he took a massive leap from 2016 into 2017. Was really a major driver of that offense improving where it did last year. Having to replace him, I know we've talked in the past about Kendall Hinton potentially getting some snaps and such. Is he the incumbent guy? And if not, what are the other quarterbacks we're looking at in the quarterback group for Wake Forest?
Yeah, it's really interesting when you talk about Wolford. I mean, he was a guy who going into last season, he wasn't even the projected starter going into camp. Kendall Hinton actually was, but Wolford had such a phenomenal August in terms of practices and scrimmages that he won it out. And obviously he proved why he won that out based on his outstanding performance during the 2017 season. I think Wake Forest was second in S&P plus passing, so outstanding there. But going into this season, all eyes were on Kendall Hinton. He had split reps with Wolford in previous years, but had even won the but lost it out due to injury. But he was actually suspended for the first 3 games of the year due to a violation of team rules. So he will miss the Tulane game, the Towson game, in a big Thursday night home game against BC. So, that throws a lot more question marks into the air. I think the first person you would look at would be Jamie Newman. He's a redshirt sophomore. Was fairly highly touted by Wake standards. Was in the Elite 11 semifinals or something like that. Had a nice spring game, 9 out of 13 for 128 yards. And then the other alternative there would be Sam Hartman. He's a true freshman, but was another high 3-star guy coming out of high school. He was an early enrollee, so participated in the spring game, participated in spring practice, and that's a guy who with the new redshirt rules, it could be a benefit to Wake Forest. Clawson may say, hey, I think he's the best guy to play games 1 through 4, but I wouldn't necessarily want to burn a full year if I'm getting Hinton back from a suspension and not an injury. So he's a guy who could potentially, I don't know if he will, but he could start the first 3 games. You slide in Hinton, and then you move Hartman down to the 3rd spot and have Newman as the backup for the remainder of the season. So I do think Newman will win it just based on having his experience in the system, but it's definitely interesting, and I think we'll get to see a little bit of how much is John Wolford versus how much is the talent around him. Because again, going into last year, fans, they weren't necessarily thrilled with Wolford. He had more interceptions than touchdowns. He took a lot of sacks, and it's tough to say how much of that was his fault. But we returned our entire offensive line, which should be one of the best in the ACC. We return a number of really talented skill position players, and Greg Dortch, I know we'll talk about that later, and then also a solid running game with Matt Colburn, Cade Carney, and then newcomer Christian Beal. So a lot of talent around the quarterback, and I think it's a situation where you don't have to ask the person to do but so much. Just sort of manage the offense and just don't make mistakes and be smart. But definitely a major storyline for Wake Forest fans to watch this year.
Yeah, look no further than the Blogger So Dear Twitter account that's affectionately named Blogger So Dortch.
Yes.
We know how important Greg Dortch is to the Wake Forest offense. He's back. Talk about that, because obviously the impact that he had the early part of last year before he got hurt. You have him, you have the other playmakers on offense. Talk a little bit about that and what kind of impact these guys can have around whoever the quarterback ends up being, before Kendall Hinton returns and then when Kendall Hinton returns.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Dortch is absolutely dynamic. He was only recruited but so much out of high school, but he camped with Wake, and a great job by the staff in terms of evaluating him. 53 receptions, 722 yards, 9 touchdowns in just 8 games last year. I think he had 4 against Louisville alone. Absolutely torched that defense. Would have loved to have seen the numbers he would have put up throughout the course of the year. And, he's definitely a player where, again, if you throw a 5-yard slant route, he can make guys miss, and he can get another 10 to 15 yards after the catch, and really create a lot of dynamic plays, make guys miss in space. Also has the opportunity to help us out both the punt return and the kick return game. So really excited about Greg Dortch. Also another major guy to watch is Scotty Washington, 6'5", really came into his own towards the end of last season, 45 receptions. Over 700 yards, 3 touchdowns, had an outstanding bowl game against Texas A&M. Could be a really nice red zone threat for us. And then, in the backfield, Matt Colburn, good senior, 7 touchdowns last year, 900 yards, 5.5 yards a carry. And then, Alex Bachman, a pretty surefire possession receiver. So I think we have a really nice balance on offense in terms of the offensive line and all the skill position players. So I'm definitely excited to see what this offense can produce in 2018.
Robert, one of the things that I thought was in particular kind of unexpected, maybe we'll say, about the 2017 team, the 2016 Wake Forest team, their calling card was their defense. They were under the direction of Mike Elko. He kind of made a name for himself as a coordinator. He'd worked with Dave Clawson for a long time, coming from Bowling Green, and even before that. And before the 2017 season, he got hired away by Notre Dame. He coached 2017 at Notre Dame, has now gone on to Texas A&M. He'll be there this fall, making roughly Texas dollars to be Texas A&M's defensive coordinator. But the long and short of it is, in 2017, Wake Forest defense, without Mike Elko's direction, kind of fell off a cliff. Like you mentioned, Wake Forest was a top 25 defense in 2016. And if I recall correctly, there wasn't massive personnel turnover going into 2017, and they fell to about a very middle of the pack across all of FBS. I think they were 65th in S&P Plus last year. Is there a lot of good reason to think that Wake Forest is going to rebound on defense this year, or is it going to be another season kind of similar to 2017 where the Demon Deacons are going to have to win a lot of games by outscoring people more so than getting solid defensive outputs?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. You would never think you would go into a season thinking Wake's going to have to rely on its offense to win, but that's exactly what happened last year, and that looks like what's going to happen again this year. As you mentioned, 65th S&P Plus, and we lose a former freshman All-American safety in Jesse Bates, who was a second-round draft pick of the Cincinnati Bengals, major playmaker, also a sixth-round draft pick pass rusher in Duke Ejiofor, along with a number of our starting linebackers. So definitely a lot to replace. I think we have some talent in the secondary for sure, especially at corners, Hassan Bassi and Mari Henderson, and then Cameron Glenn at safety, and then some interesting defensive linemen. But I think we have some question marks about our depth on the defensive line. I think Justin Strenod could be a nice linebacker for us, but definitely questions about how we step up there. So, I could see it doing a little bit worse. I felt like we gave up a few too many big plays last year. So, I'm hopeful. Last year was mostly just time getting acclimated to the new scheme, and I think with Jay Sawvell's second year in his system, I think we should be better, or at least about the same. He was pretty highly regarded coming out of Minnesota, and he has some pretty good metrics as a coach. Tends to be a very good teacher of secondary players, and a number of those guys drafted to the NFL. So, I think it's encouraging what could happen, but there's no doubt that we're missing Elko, and he's a supreme talent as a defensive mind. It's made evident by Notre Dame hiring him away, and then Texas A&M giving him, however much oil he wants to go down there. To go down there with that defense.
A lot of money.
All those oil rigs out there.
Yep.
One more question on the defense, Robert. As the defense struggled last year, did you get the impression that was more a scheme issue or more a what we'll call a talent issue of guys losing one-on-one battles?
I felt like it was talent a little bit, and I think part of it's honestly part of the problem might have been I don't want to say the offense, but it was different getting adjusted to going with a fast-paced offense, and the beauty of an up-tempo offense is you can get the other defense off kilter, but if you do have a 3 and out, then all of a sudden your defense has to go right back out there. So I don't know if I have the numbers to back it up, but I think as a defense, you do have to get used to your own offense's tempo, and that was another change for the defense as well. So maybe that's another adjustment they're able to make headed into the 2018 season. I think something I'll definitely be following this year.
Something we've been doing here, Robert, as part of our preview series is talk about new names to know on each side of the football. So I'll start with a new name to know on offense that we should all be aware of heading to the year for Wake Forest.
Yeah, I think Sage Surratt is a guy who's gotten a lot. He's a redshirt freshman. He's gotten a lot of publicity from Dave Clawson at ACC media days and things like that. And Clawson isn't one to just give out praise. And he had 6 receptions for about 100 yards in the spring game. Talented kid, a really great athlete. In his senior year, he was the North Carolina High School Player of the Year in both football and basketball. So I think he had something like 2,000 reception yards and a whole lot of touchdowns his senior year. So he might get a little bit buried on the depth chart, but I think when he gets his opportunity, he'll definitely shine. And I'll cheat a little bit and name another one on offense, and I'll say Christian Beal could be a really nice player for us, more of an all-purpose back with nice hands coming out of the backfield. So I think he could be a really nice option as well.
A lot of low-key really good backs. Turn it around, and it's a new name that we should know on defense. And I would say it doesn't have to be a freshman necessarily. It could be just somebody that wasn't a starter last year who might make an impact this year.
Sure. I think somebody like Justin Strnad, now I think he'll get an opportunity to be a starter at linebacker. He's a really good athlete, so I think he's probably more the type of linebacker I would like to see moving forward, somebody who can help in pass coverage but also pass rush. I feel like that's been a little bit of a weakness of our linebackers. Like last year, I thought maybe they were good tacklers, but against some of the offenses, I think that probably led to some of the problems that we saw last year. But I think he's got great range, and I think he had something like 60 tackles last year despite not starting. So he had really nice interception against Syracuse. I would look for him to make a lot of plays this year for the Deacons on defense.
We got to ask the natural question here, Robert, with how good Wake Forest has been and how far they've come in the last 5 years. This is year number 5 for Dave Clawson. He's never stayed at a program longer than 5 years. He's certainly entertained other coaching opportunities. He's been thought very highly of because of the turnaround at Wake Forest. What do you think the longevity is for Clawson? Do you think he stays at Wake Forest for the long haul? Do you think he's primed for another offer, maybe at a big-time program? Do you think he's a big-time program coach? Like, tackle all of that for us, because there's a lot there.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly he's moved around a little bit, but I think they've all been strategic and pretty large steps up. He turned around Fordham, then he went to Richmond, and then Bowling Green, and brief stint at Tennessee, but now at Wake Forest. So those are all major steps, and he's gotten Wake Forest to the point where there are definitely better programs out there, no doubt about it. Places where he could win, or he could earn more money. Places where he could win more games, but places that would also come with more pressure and fan scrutiny. So, I don't know if a school like Florida State or something. Obviously, they just made a new hire, but I don't know if a program like that would necessarily look to hire Clawson. Those programs seem to hire guys that are already at top 10 programs, either as coordinators or honestly even some of them as head coaches. If you look at an Urban Meyer going from a Florida and elite program to Ohio State and an even stronger one. I've heard he's interested in the NFL. Just in general, not saying he's looking at any NFL jobs, but I've heard, that's sort of a true dream for him. I feel like he would do a good job pretty much anywhere. But I'm thrilled to have him. I think, again, he's gotten to the point where Wake Forest can be a really nice job. He seems to jive really well with the culture. He went to Williams, a top liberal arts school, so I think he gets the component of community and education, and I think he really knows how to recruit the right kids for our program, and not to say that other schools, right way isn't wrong or anything like that. It's just I think he really knows a formula for success at Wake Forest, and I think he really loves how much he's been embraced by our fan base and by the administration. The administration has helped, and the donors have helped, given him a brand new indoor football facility. We have a new sports performance facility that's going to be finished within the next 6 to 7 months. So we're definitely putting the resources in to help him out and help the program grow. So I don't know exactly how much longer he would stay. In my heart, he'll stay for another 5+ years, and I hope he does, because no matter how much he's succeeded here and everywhere else, he still has a chip on his shoulder, and he's a feisty and an angry guy, and I love that about him. He's a true builder and a class act. But I wouldn't be shocked if Wake has a new head coach next year or 2 or 3 years from now. But what I will say is that what Clawson has done for this program is, I can't really describe just in words what it means to me as a Wake Forest fan, as an alum, for the community. And I know this because of what he has done. Wake will be a much more attractive job for whoever we are looking to hire next, because what he has done is sustainable. If you look at the recruiting classes improving every year, the facilities that are being built, the number of kids with other Power 5 offers, the depth that we have on this team, it's going to be an attractive job for people, and it's not just going to be a job where they're set up to dry and moving forward because they don't have a chance to succeed. So I hope I don't know if we'll be doing podcasts in 2028, but I hope Dave Clawson's on the sidelines in Winston-Salem, and we're previewing another good team. So that's sort of what I have to say about him.
I think it really speaks to his ability, what he's been able to do at Wake Forest without totally blowing recruiting out of the water. It's not like they went from 60s and 70s ranking in recruiting to like 20s and 30s. It hasn't blown it out of the water. And yet the fact that they've had the success that they had, like you're saying, Robert, I think speaks to his ability to scheme, to build a community, to get buy-in, to build something that is replicable, we'll say, that another coach could come in and pick up and keep moving with. So I think it's definitely a very positive thing that it speaks to his ability to build a program there at Wake Forest, where traditionally it has not been a super easy place to build. And schedule here this season in our previous series, we want to basically take the 12 games on the schedule and we want to divide them up among surefire wins, surefire losses, and maybe more of the toss-up variety. And maybe the easiest thing to do to start out with is to look and see if there's anything on the schedule that you look at and just think, man, that is a surefire loss. Like that isn't happening.
Well, fortunately, not as many in this category as in years past.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be a homer and say we don't have any surefire losses. Even though we're playing them at home, it's tough to imagine beating Clemson. I mean, they are just ridiculously talented at all positions. I mean, I don't think a player on – that's the thing. You guys know this, but not everybody following college sports know this. There's not a player on Wake Forest roster who had a Clemson offer. So, that's not to say guys like Greg Dortch couldn't make their team and play big minutes now, but, they didn't have those offers coming out of high school. So, I think that's a pretty much a surefire loss.
I'm not sure the country would have a game against and not call it.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Sorry about that.
I was going to say, I think it's an insult to look at the game against Clemson and say that that's a surefire loss. I don't know how many teams in the country could look at that, against and say that's not a fair loss. I mean, you're talking 10 teams maybe.
Yeah, I mean they're just so good, and it's not a criticism of our team or of our program to say that's not a surefire loss. I mean they're a likely candidate to get back to the college football playoff yet again. I mean their fans can pretty much. I don't know where the college football playoff is this year, but their fans can pretty much start booking tickets and making hotel reservations early, because that's just. That's where Dabo has this program right now, and he is, and I know their fans always thought they had a great program, and you know what, they were right. They weren't getting to where they could have been, but Dabo has them there. He's doing a phenomenal job with that team. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear anything you just said.
Joe, are you back?
We're back.
All right, I hear it now. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Robert, I was good. I was in the middle of saying something to Robert, and I looked down and realized my microphone was off. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I saw your lips moving. I saw that moving.
So it's back.
Right as my internet went out.
Yeah. So Joe, you didn't actually miss anything.
Okay, perfect.
So we have a good.
Please continue.
Okay. All right. We'll just add this out. So, Robert, we were just talking to Cam Underwood from State of the U when we did our Miami preview, and we kind of went through the schedule with him, and we talked about the Hurricanes and how talented they are compared to the rest of the Coastal Division, and even looking at Miami stacking up against a team like Clemson, like you just mentioned, with how talented Clemson is, it doesn't feel like Clemson can really lose to anybody they play. And we'll see what happens in the college football playoff, but to call Clemson a surefire loss, I think is a pretty safe thing to say, even though they have, been bitten by the upset bug here the last couple seasons with, of course, Syracuse last year, Pitt 2 years ago in the national championship season. But this Clemson team, I'm not sure we've seen a team this talented in a long, long time.
Yeah, I think, I know they're all true freshmen, but I think I saw something like they had the top recruit in 6 states or something like that. And these are really good football states. So they're bringing out some really good programs for these kids. So, yeah, it's just and how Dabo convinced those defensive linemen to come back and turn down those millions from the NFL. I will never know. I guess they like the slide down there. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, we can start. We can start conspiracy theories on this podcast, Joey. We can just say that Clemson's paying players,
Whoa. It's not reporting. It's saying it out loud. That's what I learned from Barstool Sports.
Yeah, not reporting.
I, too, started listening to that podcast today. I was going to bring up, too, that S&P Plus, they have, win percentages for all the games that every team is matched up against. And Clemson has 2 games on the schedule that they're given less than an 80% chance of winning by S&P Plus, which is filthy. But that's enough about Clemson on a Wake Forest podcast. So that's Clemson. So we're going to call that a surefire loss. So, Robert, are we calling home against Notre Dame on September 22nd and on the road at Florida State in late October, both toss-up games?
I hate to say it depends on your definition of toss-up. I mean, I wouldn't call those surefire losses. I mean, I definitely think, they'll be touchdown favorites or something like that. I mean, I think we got a decent shot at Notre Dame, though, the quarterback, if that's Hinton's first game back or something like that, that adds a few complexities to it. But at FSU, we get that one coming off of a bye week. You never know. We've played them tough. We sort of blew a chance to beat them at home last year. So, we'll see where Taggart has them. But I would say those are likely losses, but I wouldn't say they're surefire losses if I can, manipulate your own grading system on your show.
I'll allow it.
All right.
I actually wouldn't call Notre Dame a surefire loss either. The fact that Wake Forest gets the game at home, they're actually pretty competitive with Notre Dame last year. I know Notre Dame got out to a huge lead, but Wolford kept them in it basically single-handedly in South Bend. Now, you don't have Wolford this year, so I don't know what kind of difference that makes. We'll all find out together. But I wouldn't call that necessarily a surefire loss either because you get the game at home. I don't know what Florida State's going to be. I think Florida State would be close to a surefire loss, but I don't, again, we're going to find out a lot about Florida State. Who's the quarterback going to be? Is it going to be Francois or is it going to be James Blackman, who apparently is the betting favorite in Vegas? Joey and I touched on that on a podcast last week. And we'll see what they got with the new coaching staff. But on the road to Florida State, I think would be tough. So I'd say 2 surefire losses, Joey. I'll say Clemson and on the road at Florida State. Those will be my 2.
I think I'm good with that. I'm gonna give a slight chance against Notre Dame, again being a home game, and Lord knows what we're ever going to get in Notre Dame, in any given year. But I think if we said that Wake Forest, there's no way they go any better than 10-2. I think everybody's going to agree to that.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that.
Yeah, 10-2. They'll be lighting Winston-Salem on fire.
Now Dave Clawson would leave if we went 10-2 because those were some. Yeah, Battery's backing the Brinks truck up, and we're taking out some serious loans to pay for them with the endowments coming out. I don't know what's working on there.
Well, that's what you got to balance. You can't do too well because then the coach gets known and gets hired elsewhere, and you want to keep him. So you got to kind of manage how much success you're having in any given year.
Yeah, if we're getting a little too cute with it, let's just go 9-3. Let's call it even.
Sure. Surefire wins, Robert. I'm seeing Towson, Rice. I feel really good about home against Syracuse. Is that it? I'm intentionally leaving one of them off. I've got an opinion on that game.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of surefire, I definitely agree with you on Towson and Rice, and I like our chances definitely at home against Cuse. Maybe this is a hot take. I'm not sure Babers is all that. I think he's really benefited from. Honestly, he benefited a lot from the program that Clawson built, and then he kind of just maintained it, and then program tanked after he left. So I'm not sure what he can do. Is that sustainable? And Syracuse is really fallen off in the second half of seasons from the Bill C article that I read. So I like our chances there. And I think Pitt. I won't call Pitt a surefire win, but I think we have a lot that are pretty decent chances. But in terms of surefire, yeah, I would probably stop it at Towson and Rice. I mean, those are the only 2 I would be shocked if we lost those games.
Joey, I'm going with Towson, Rice, Syracuse. I don't think Syracuse is going to be good. And Joey, I'm going to throw another one out here for you. And this is a surefire win that might not actually be a surefire win, but I think Louisville is going to be really bad. Like, I don't think Louisville is going to be that good. I get it's on the road. It's crazy to call a road game a surefire win, especially with a team that does recruit decent talent at Louisville. Petrino's done an okay job recruiting since he got back for the second stint. I don't want to call it a surefire win. I feel really, really good about Wake in that game, though.
I'm with you on that. I like Wake's chances there. I'm not going to call it a surefire win. Again, I'm with you. Like, Louisville has a talent advantage in that game, and they're at home for what that's worth. But if you ask me at that point in the season, who's going to be the better coach team and who am I going to feel better about? Probably Wake Forest, frankly, as a Louisville fan. I'm not all that high on them. Robert, so the thing is that puts us at 3-2 with 7 toss-up games, and the game that we haven't mentioned yet is the opening game on the road at Tulane. I don't know if you're with me, but I personally am of the opinion that is a low-key kind of dangerous game. That Tulane, especially in New Orleans in friggin' September, where it's going to be about 1,000,000 degrees outside, that could be kind of a somewhat dangerous spot for the Demon Deacons to start the year.
Unfortunately, I agree with you. Yeah, I think we're about 7.5 point favorite or something in that one, though. I don't know if that line probably came out prior to the Hinton news. And we played Tulane to open the 2016 season at home, and we beat them like 7-3 or something. Now, we ended up, playing much better throughout the year. That was probably one of our worst games of the year, but they gave us a big run for the money. I think Fritz is doing a nice job there. He's done a nice job at other programs. That's no matter who starts that game for Wake, it's going to be his first career start at the collegiate level. In a road game, night game, as you mentioned, even if it's at night, going to be really hot down there in Louisiana. I think I think we'll get by just based on the overall talent of our offense, and I think the pieces we'll have coming back on defense. But I think that is a game that's rightfully left out of the guaranteed wins category for sure, and would not be surprised at all if we lost that game.
That could decide a bowl berth when looking at the schedule.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. I'm with you 100%. I mean, as you guys just sort of mentioned, you only mentioned a few surefire losses, a few surefire wins, and then a lot of toss-ups, and we got to find a way to get to 6. So that's one where if we lose, that could make us, probably favored to miss a bowl at that point of the season, losing that one. I mean, I think we could still do it even if we lose that one, but it certainly makes our lives a lot harder. So definitely very important to get off to a great start in September.
Looking at game number 3 against Boston College, what a great year to get BC at home, because I don't know what your opinion is of Boston College, Robert. Joey and I both think that they might be one of the surprise teams in the ACC this year. With the talent they're returning and A.J. Dillon doing what he's been able to do at running back. If they get literally anything out of the quarterback position, I think Boston College could potentially be an 8 or even a 9-win team. It's kind of crazy to think about, best case scenario for Boston College. But what a year to get them at home, because especially now with the Kendall Hinton news, you're not going to have him for game 3. You get BC at home. That's another one of the big games on the schedule that not a lot of people are going to be talking about because it's just an early September ACC game.
Yeah, that's definitely a big one for us. And, our schedule's interesting because we either get BC and Syracuse both at home, or we get them both on the road. So that's going to be huge for us, especially with the Hint news. I agree. If we were at BC, I would hate our chances in that one, especially being the third game of the season prior to Hinton being able to come back. And they really got better as the season went along last year. As you mentioned, Dillon is a total stud at running back. We ended up beating them, I think 34 or 31-10 last year in the second game of the year, but it looks like a blowout, but that was not. I think we only outgained them by about 10 yards in that one. So definitely a much closer game, and they just didn't have the quarterback situation figured out at that point. But definitely got better as the season went along, and that's again a pivotal game for us, especially if we lose to Tulane in the opening game. But if we start off 2-0, we got some wiggle room. But that's a program where that's what Clawson has done so well is, we haven't beaten Clemson. We haven't beaten Florida State. We beat Louisville once last year. But what he's done a really good job of is beating, quote unquote, these pure schools like Syracuse, beating Boston College last year, starting to take care of Duke, beating NC State last year. So, beating Virginia. So, these are the kind of games we have to win in order to maintain that relevance and that momentum. So this is going to be a huge game for us on that Thursday night. I'm really looking forward to the atmosphere. But I agree with you. Yeah, BC could be really good this year. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No. I interrupted you. The thing that I look at here that I think is interesting is if you look at an absolute worst case scenario for Wake Forest through their first 7 games, you're probably talking about 2-5. So that's a win over Towson, a win over Rice, and then you find a way to lose to Tulane, Boston College, Notre Dame, Clemson, Florida State, right? 2-5 going into Louisville. The good news about that is that those last 5 games, I don't know that there's any of them that you don't consider winnable, right? At Louisville, home against Syracuse, at NC State, home against Pittsburgh, at Duke. You could be 2-5 and still make a bowl game at that point. I think the back end of the schedule gets a lot softer and a lot easier to find wins in, even if the first part of the schedule has been a lot more tough sledding, we'll say.
Yeah. And in terms of looking at sort of how I see the season going out, I think, sort of working backwards at Duke, definitely a very winnable game for us. Pittsburgh at home, they've been fine under Narduzzi. Had a nice win over Miami last year, but they haven't quite taken off as the early returns. At State, we routinely struggle in Raleigh, but they have to replace that entire defensive line. They do bring Finley back, but fortunately they don't have Hines or Samuel, so definitely a winnable game. And then at Syracuse, I know you guys were talking about that as potentially a surefire win. So I would definitely say we have a good chance. And then at Louisville, huge question marks about that team. Fortunate we beat them pretty decently last year, but they lose Lamar Jackson, and I know Petrino has done a very good job with pretty much every offense he's had, and I don't know who their quarterback's supposed to be. Maybe that Jawan Pass guy. I know he's a pretty highly talented player, but I mean their defense was absolutely awful last year. So, and they were still just okay. So losing a Superman in Lamar Jackson, I agree with you. They could take a major step back this year, and I don't know the beginning of their year, but that could be one where that game means a lot more to Wake than Louisville. So I might end up liking Wake in that spot. So. Fortunate to get the bye week sort of right in the middle of the season again, so that could give us a nice rest. And I wouldn't say we would be favored by any stretch of the imagination to make a bowl if we started 2-5, but I wouldn't rule us out either.
Joey, what do you got for a record prediction? Want to take first stab?
Yeah, I'll take it. I wouldn't be shocked if Wake Forest were a straight 3-3. We talked about Towson, Rice, Syracuse, and Notre Dame, Florida State, Clemson. So my natural inclination probably is to call this like a 6-6 season, but I've also learned that Dave Clawson is going to probably outperform my expectations most years. So that's where I start to lean 7-5. I think they're gonna win a couple games that I'm not super confident that they'll win. And they'll take care of business where they're supposed to. And I think that's all I got. I think they're going to go 7-5. And that's, again, that might be overperforming given what they got on the schedule, what they're trying to replace this year on both sides of the ball. I'm going 7-5. Mike?
I'm going 7-5 as well. I think best case, though, you can get, it's, if Hinton was playing quarterback the first 3 games, you feel a lot better about saying, oh, yeah, they can go 8-4. Given that he's not going to be under center for, the first quarter of their schedule, it makes the Tulane game and the BC game. The BC game was going to be interesting anyway. It makes the Tulane game a lot more interesting. It makes that BC game tough, but not impossible given that they're at home. So I'm going to go 7-5 just because of the uncertainty in the early part of the schedule. But I think if they had Kendall Hinton and you knew what you had at quarterback, given the fact that we've seen Kendall Hinton play before and we know he's capable, I would have felt a lot better about saying, oh, yeah, this team could definitely go 8-4, especially given the uncertainty with the teams that they're facing in the back half of the schedule. Louisville could be primed for a step back. We know what Syracuse is. If they don't have Eric Dungy, and look, it's going to be November 3rd. There's a good chance Eric Dungy won't be under center because he always gets hurt sometime in the middle of October. That's just what the track record is. So good chance he's not playing quarterback in that game. Even if he is playing quarterback, it might not matter. Excuse me. NC State, we don't know what they got outside of Ryan Finley. Pitt is complete Jekyll and Hyde. Their defense is terrible, and really the only time that they had any sort of offensive success last year was when Kenny Pickett was under center in the back part of the year. And really, we're only going to call that a success because they upset Miami in a game that nobody was expecting them to win. And then you go at Duke at the end of the year. Duke's Duke. That's a 7 or 8 win program at best. More than likely going to be meddling in that 5 to 8 win range because that's what they do. And I think Wake Forest can definitely win that game, even though it's on the road. I'm going to go with 7-5 just to be safe. Long story short, and we'll see what happens. But Robert, what do you think? You're the expert here,
Well, that's
congratulations.
That's very, very polite of you to say. Guess we're all on. I also had 7-5. It probably won't break down at the 7 I pick. I do have a starting 4-2 with losses to Notre Dame and Clemson, but 3-3 honestly most likely start there with BC looking harder and harder by the day, as well as that Tulane game, unfortunately. So I think we even if we don't go 7-5, I think we definitely we'll find a way to get to 6-6, get back to bowl eligibility for the third straight year. And I think the interesting thing about our schedule, and we've already gone over, is if we do lose to a Tulane, provided that we play well and it turns out Tulane's just a good team, I see no reason why we can't make that up with either a quote unquote upset win at Louisville or a win at State and sort of get back on schedule. So definitely going to be a lot of exciting games. In Winston and all throughout the Southeast this fall, and probably a lot of really close and competitive games that come down to the fourth quarter.
There you have it. At least 6-6 going bowling in a rebuilding year at Wake Forest is a tribute to what Dave Clawson has done for our Demon Deacons in the ACC Atlantic. Robert Reinhard, thank you so much for joining us. Tell them where they can find your work.
Well, they can follow me on Twitter at Robert_Reinhard, and occasionally I might start to produce some content for Blogger So Dear again. I'll try and get a little bit work out there in the fall and help my good friend Riley Johnston out, who's doing a nice job being the managing editor of the site.
Hey, nowhere better for Wake Forest news than Blogger So Dear on the SB Nation Network. So go check them out. Robert, thank you for joining us. We'd love to have you on anytime, and good luck to your Demon Deacons this year.
Thanks so much, guys. I always enjoy it, and hopefully Wake's having a good season in the fall, and you guys want me back to talk about the unbelievable start that we've gotten off to.
Hell yeah.
Demon takes. I just tweeted this out. Demon takes for the Demon Deacons. Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's going to retweet.
Oh yeah, Robert. Frankly, if you asked us where Demon Deacons got its start, I'm not really sure either of us could explain it at this point. It's been years. So
I said it, and I had been drinking, so
we've all been there. We've all been there.
And that's how it started.
There it is. Robert, thank you for joining us. We'll love to have you on again soon. Mike, we got to get out of here. Until next time, they can find us on Twitter. I am at FTRS Joey. He is at Mike McDaniel CFB, and together we're at BC Podcast ACC. And our guest, Robert Reinhard, is on Twitter at Robert_Reinhard. Y'all can find us on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, the Overcast app, wherever fine podcasts are sold for free. Y'all can send us an email with your questions, comments, concerns to the longest email address known to man, basketballconferencepodcast@gmail.com.
Nailed it.
Yeah. Mike, tell them where they can find us on the social medias.
Facebook.com/basketball conference, rate, review, find all of our podcasts there, Joey.
Please do. And also, you can come find us on YouTube if you're so inclined, and go see what Robert Reinhard's sweet-looking Wake Forest shirt looks like, and all of the above. So come check it out. Mike, anything else before we get out of here?
I think we're good, buddy.
Let's preview some more teams. We'll have those coming up for you soon. And until then, for Mr. Mike McDaniel and Mr. Robert Reinhard, I am Joey Weaver. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. And until then, go ACC.